of that sticks with you while, you're dealing with stress of midterms. I know what time in the semester it is. But I do mean it. It is really remarkable to have years in your life where your main job, your main purpose is really just to be learning and to expand your minds. So not to be the person who's like, well, kids, be grateful, but be grateful. There's a really kind of beautifully hopeful sentiment to this stuff that is striking me today and that struck me last week. And I look out at this sea of faces and I think about all of you being learners, and it does something for me too. So thank you, because you all actually remind me to be very hopeful in a time when there's terrible tragedy and sort of seemingly insurmountable crises, and the statistics all feel very dire, and they make us really afraid that we're helpless. I think that's kind of a universal thing happening if you watch the news and or spend any time on social media, right? But you guys being here remind me that we're not helpless, because each of you is proof of that fact. Every time any of us chooses to get up and show up, to have a conversation, to open our ears and listen, to learn, we're choosing activism. Even coming to a talk, if you follow me, I'm going to talk about some activism. You're choosing that today over complacency or silence because it's easy or because it would have been way warmer to stay in bed. So I appreciate that. And I hope that you know that any act of showing up is not a small thing. Each of those acts makes the world a better place, and we do live in a world that needs bettering. As it is International Women's Day, I do want to talk to you guys a little bit about where women stand across the globe. Thus, I did my homework. I have some facts to read to you. And as was mentioned in my introduction, my greatest passion is the empowerment of women and girls. I'm driven by it as a moral goal, but I'm also driven by the data proofs that make gender parity a must for a world that's moving forward. And parity does begin in places like this, in educational institutions, especially early educational institutions. We live on a planet where there are more than 65 million girls that we know of that are not in school. And I believe, and global research happens to back me up here, that if we examine any issue, say we want to look at the Millennium Development Goals, whether it's eliminating hunger, eradicating disease, reversing climate change, ensuring that all girls have access to education is a vital component of that solution. Girls' education is an intrinsic right, but it's also a global imperative if we want to reach those development objectives. If half of a population can't read or write, they can't support themselves or their families, they can't contribute fully to their society, any sort of meaningful development just isn't possible. Women and girls are disproportionately affected by discrimination, violence, and exploitation, and 70% of the 1 billion poorest people on Earth are female. The barriers that stand between this population and their goals are vast. There are the economic burdens of school fees, the perceived opportunity costs to families due in certain countries to girls' household responsibilities. Did any of you guys know that girls in the developing world have a workload that averages 6 times larger than that of their male counterparts? They're often responsible for the housework, water collection, caring for their younger siblings, selling family goods in the market. Kind of makes the econ midterm feel like a little less stressful, right? Just perspective. There's often a threat of safety in school or en route to school, and the number of schools that women have access to drops drastically after primary school. Long distances that have to be walked, often hours each way, from girls' homes to secondary schools puts them at risk. Since 2014, an estimated 2,000 women and girls in Nigeria have been abducted by Boko Haram. Many of us heard about the 200, but we're looking at a multiplication factor that is not really hitting the news. From 2009 to 2014, more than 70 countries have experienced attacks at their schools, and early marriage is a heartbreaking factor around the globe. 39,000 girls under the age of 18 are forced into marriage every day. That's 27 girls under the age of 18 who are getting married every minute. I've been up here for 6 minutes, so you can do the math. If these trends continue, we can estimate that 140 million girls around the world will have become child brides between 2011 and 2020. And a third of those girls will be brides before their 15th birthdays. There's a lot of dark data I just dropped on you, right? But this is actually where I think that the hope comes in. We live in a world that is more interconnected than we've ever been. We have these numbers at our fingertips. We know what the problems are that go on, whether they're next door or in the country next to us or anywhere around the globe. And each one of you has the power to throw your voices and your dollars and your weight behind causes that can change these statistics. This is why I am proud to be an ambassador for the Girl Project. We're working to chip away at barriers and bottlenecks that keep more than 50 million girls out of secondary school. And here's where the numbers get hopeful. Girls who complete secondary school are 6 times less likely to become child brides. For every 4 years of education girls attain, they have 1 less child. Meaning if girls stay in school longer, they're less likely to have children while they're still children themselves. And children with educated mothers are twice as likely to go to school themselves. So educating girls has a generational impact. A single year of secondary school education has been proven to increase women's wages later in life anywhere from 15 to 20%. And studies show that these women reinvest up to 90% of their incomes back into their families. Educated mothers provide better nutrition and health care to their children. Again, generational impact. In fact, if women's level of employment matched men's over the next 15 years on a global scale, the worldwide GDP would raise by 12%. Worldwide. The first step to that employment equity is equal access to education. We can do this. I mean, we're doing it in this room right now. I have a hunch that One Tree Hill might be why there's so many more women than men in this audience, but I look out and I'm like, look at all these educated ladies. So there's a big global idea for us, right, to kick off the day, and the math is scary, but it's also reassuring. Before I continue, I'd like to ask each of you just to take a second, and you don't have to say it out loud. I know it'll get loud, but think about numbers that affect you. I'm up here talking about the statistics of women's access to education around the world because I travel the world and I work with these girls and I see what happens. That's what matters most to me. But I'm curious about when you leave today, what you'll be thinking about that matters to you. You guys have a lot of pull, and maybe more than you know. I don't know if you're aware that women drive 70 to 80% of all consumer purchases. And every time you spend $1, you vote with your dollar. That's why so many companies work so hard to sell us things. You guys have the power to shape the global economy. And I know that at this stage in your life, you're probably sitting here wondering if you have the power to shape your own future, to get the job that you want, to succeed in grad school if that's your goal. But don't forget how big your power really is. You can shape a global economy. You can definitely nail your midterms. And how, you're probably asking though, and I know it seems kind of like an impossible question to answer, and we all have a lot on our plates. You know, work, family, school, as I mentioned, your healthcare, potentially student loans, relationships, there's a lot. Everybody has a personal equation that they're trying to solve, and that's a universal truth. The specifics are unique, but we're all working on solving for X. So how do we go about solving these things and making our life feel fulfilling when we're hustling? How do we slow down when it seems like the pace of the world is just getting faster and faster? You're nodding. I'm like, I know, right? How do we appreciate the journey on our way to the destination? I don't have the solution. I don't believe there is a solution. I got to speak with a really cool gal backstage from the student paper, and I was like, I don't have the big answer. No one just wakes up one day and goes, oh my God, today's the day. Today's the day I feel amazing. I'm going to stop criticizing myself, and everything from here on out is going to be perfect. I don't believe that it works like that. But what I do know is that we change all throughout our lives. And that's part of the reason I don't think there's some aha moment where everything is different. Every time you reach a goal, you set a new one. Every time you succeed at something, you hopefully celebrate that success, even though society doesn't give us a lot of leeway to do that, right? But then you're on to the next one. You're always looking forward. It's just life. We continue to place our goals out there on that horizon line, and that's a good thing, I think. I think that goal setting and resetting goals as you achieve success, as you do the thing that you've been waiting to do, I think it's really healthy to say, okay, what's next? But I do want to remind you to focus on the journey, because it's the getting there that is life. You know, the stuff that's always out there is always ahead. And if we're only ever looking there, we're not focusing on this stuff. And it is hard. Nobody teaches us how to do that, how to enjoy the little victories and how to take more deep breaths. There's not a ton of practice, I think, of self-care. But I really do think it matters. I think the slowing down is where the magic happens, if you will. And it took me a long time to learn that lesson, that I have to, you know, like they say on the airplane, always put your oxygen mask on before you help others. Self-care is not selfish, that there are these truths like that. I say that to a lot of young women. I say it all the time. I met a girl this weekend who was like, I got self-care is not selfish tattooed on my arm. And I was like, that is a huge commitment. Thank you. I'm glad I said that succinctly, because I can't imagine in the diatribes I'm generally delivering, if you tried to do that, like, would it have been a back tattoo? I don't know. That's one of those little digestible nuggets that I know to be true. It's one of the things I've learned along the way, and it's one of the things that helps me enjoy the space in between. While I'm goal setting, while I'm thinking about the position of women and girls around the globe and what's happening with the environment, I have to remember self-care is not selfish. I say that to myself every day. If you want to do that, take it, please. There's a couple of other things like that I've learned, and I think, if I may, I'd like to share with you, because we each kind of pick up what works for us and I think figure out how to build a life. So what are some other things that I know for sure? I know that history is on your side. I know that there are great lessons to be learned from women and men who have come before you about how to lead big, bold, purpose-driven lives. So look around and listen to them and ask questions. Do not be shy. History is on your side. And if you are coming from a place of tolerance, kindness, thoughtfulness, and you are choosing to use your drive to change the world, you will be on the right side of history. And in 15 years, you will be the ones telling kids in college that history is on their side too. Just like you can shape the global economy, you can shape the trajectory of the planet. I truly believe every single one of you in this room can do that. I know that as you take your spirit and your passion out into the world, if you commit to that, you will shape it. I know that identifying what's right can feel sometimes a little easier if you're looking at the world than identifying one's own personal purpose. It's often really easy to see great qualities in other people, right? Like, I look at my best friends and I'm like, look how smart and bold and beautiful and brilliant and capable they are. We don't really know how to do that for ourselves, and hopefully your friends are also doing that for you. Personal purpose, I think, is just as hard to come by as self-confidence. And that's okay, because just as your goals are going to change, the thing that feels like your calling can change. You know, I went to university for a BFA theater program and realized I didn't like it, and dropped out of the theater school and moved into the journalism school. And everybody at my college was like, what are you doing? You're trying to be an actor. And I was like, I know, but I'm not having any fun. And I realized that the reason that I want to tell stories is because I want to tell stories about real people. I want to shed light on people's struggle and on their communities and on ways that we can make them better. And I found my voice to do that in the journalism school, which made me a better actor. So you're allowed to course correct, you're allowed to change your minds, and if people are telling you you're totally nuts, it's probably because you're onto something, so trust your gut. Purpose is in your gut. If you want to know how to find it, a really good friend of mine always says, look for the thing that breaks your heart. And I add to that, and I'm like, or the thing that fills you with white-hot rage, because that's a thing. Either of those sort of big, complex emotional reactions will tell you what you care the most about in the world. The thing that breaks your heart or that lights a fire in you that will never go out is your purpose. So identify the anger, identify the heartbreak, and then spend your life working on fixing it. You can do that. If every single person in this room dedicated themselves to bettering the purpose that deeply affects them, the whole world would change so fast. That is a thing that I know. I went a little tangential on that, but I basically got through my notes. Dedication to those things can feel tiring if you're not also practicing self-care. But dedication has to be rooted in passion. You have to find and foster your insatiable desire for the truth, especially given that we live in this world that is very hell-bent on rebranding truth and things like science as opinions. This world of alternative facts. There are no such thing. They don't exist. I'm sure I don't have to say that to all of you brilliant, educated people, but I feel like I have to say it 100 times a day anyway, just to be safe. We have to start defending facts over opinions. And people have a right to their opinions, but opinions that are rooted in fear or exclusion do not have a right to govern the lives of other people. That is a thing that I know to be true. That is a thing that as I see people nodding, I'm like, clearly you know it. So we have to figure out how to fix it. We have to figure out how to put that passion, that hunger for truth into action and make the world around us a better place, even if the ways that we're doing that feel small or incremental. They matter and they add up to the big, big things. Identify what matters to you, how you want to make the world around you better, and just commit to baking those principles into your life. I don't know about you guys, but I know that I was raised in this sort of world that liked to tell me that, you know, when you were successful enough or well-known enough, or you'd founded a company that was big enough, or you'd made enough money, you could change the world. It doesn't work like that anymore. You look at those students in Florida, they're changing the landscape of laws in the United States right now, and they're the people I am the most proud of in the world, and in awe of in the world. You look at companies, this thing, you know, they mentioned that I work with a lot of tech companies because I love nerdy things, and also I like figuring out stuff that makes our world easier. And a couple of years ago, a group of founders started this thing called 1% of nothing, where they committed on any big idea for a startup that they would, from the beginning, dedicate 1% of that company to a charity. So if you build the next billion-dollar company, you are, from inception, you don't have to argue with your shareholders, you don't have to argue with people who want great stock returns, you don't have to figure out where it goes once the company's so big that does something really match the ethos. Sometimes it just takes shifting a perspective or owning your own strength, even in the face of your fear or your self-doubt. Like I said, that stuff doesn't go away. I think we just learn to pay a little less attention to it. So pay less attention to it. I would like you guys to have that now. I'd like you to know that in your late teens, your early 20s, rather than like your early 30s or your mid 40s. Just do it now. You're all so much more capable than you might be sure of, but I have a hunch you have a feeling that you are. And the last thing that I know, which seems to be the most impactful thing that I say when I'm yammering about what I believe in to people, is that you are absolutely and utterly allowed to be both a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time. So don't wait until you're just a masterpiece. Like, life is a work in progress, and you're capable and beautiful and nailing it already. And now I'm going to stop talking at you, and I would love to talk with you. Thanks, guys. Hi.
Hello? Hello? All right. Thanks so much for that very educational and inspiring talk.
I saw the time ticking down, and I was like, speak faster, speak faster, speak faster.
No, that's cool. I think that's just like the leftover time is. You mentioned that you're so happy that you're here. We are too. Like, I am really, really happy. I might be able to stumble my words and stuff like that. But,
no worries.
But why is it so important for you to be here during this day?
As I mentioned, it's such a cool thing. I mean, first of all, everybody always thinks, well, or what I hear anyway, that a lot of people think is that, I work on TV and people are like, oh, she's just nailing it and must be like so sure of herself all the time.
Yeah.
And I got the invitation to come here and I was like, they want me to go on International Women's Day? That's so cool. It's a hugely meaningful thing to be invited, by a school to speak to a room full of students like you and to come on a day like today. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't know, I geek out on International Women's Day, like about Gloria Steinem.
Yeah.
And then to be asked to speak on that day, I'm sort of like, oh, okay, I gotta own this. So yeah, I think I feel so lucky to be able to come and have conversations about, purpose and meaning. And I'm also just really flattered to be here. Yeah.
And I think for us, again, I guess I can speak on behalf of everyone. I think it's not just because we watch you on TV and you're an amazing actress, but it's also the values that you have and the message that you show to people. That's why we look up to you. I think, I don't know, you guys, yeah?
Thank you.
Yeah. And for us, like, we look up to you, but who are those people that you look up to?
Oh, yeah. I did actually, 2 years ago at the Women's March, get to hang with Gloria Steinem. I may or may not have cried. Totally did. After, kept my cool. My best friend was with me, and she was like, you are up creating such a beautiful foundational friendship where, like, you're sending each other videos in the morning being like, can I wear these weird pants? Like, is this okay? Or, this crazy thing happened today and did you hear about it? And I want to tell you that I love you. And that's it. It's kind of a surreal thing when that begins to happen for you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why it is important to identify who in your life you admire and why, because then you start to set a precedent for what kinds of people you want to help build the energetic foundation of the way that you live. They say that you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Don't spend time with assholes. Don't do that. Spend time with inspiring, cool, dedicated, charitable, smart people.
Yeah.
Don't waste your time with assholes. Don't do it.
Yeah. My sister's right here, and I'm like, I spend time with her. She better not be an asshole. No, I'm kidding. She's awesome.
She's like, what's going on?
But one of the things that you keep mentioning about, like, women and stuff, and the tech industry, you are a big techie person, and usually there's not a lot of women in that industry. What made you want to dive into that?
Oh, I love to walk into rooms where they're not used to seeing ladies. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, guys, do you want to talk about it? Let me teach you some things. I think it's so incredibly important for more women to be working in big business, to be working in tech, to be working in STEM. I think it's something we have to analyze first before we even talk about how to get in the room is why we're not in the rooms, why we're not welcomed in the rooms, why don't we goal set to be in the rooms. Women are not encouraged by what they see to jump into careers in STEM very often. Nobody, I think until a little more recently, unless you were a hyper nerd like me, who grew up going to JPL and being obsessed with NASA, nobody was like, science is so sexy. Science is sexy. Yeah. Smart women are sexy. And there's people who will say like, oh, well, that's reductive. No, it's not. Everybody wants to feel empowered and strong and good in their body, whether you're male or female, regardless of how you gender identify, everybody wants to feel at home in their body. Sexy is a shorthand for that. Intellect is sexy. Your brain is sexy. Your brain is the most valuable part of your body. And I think when we start reinforcing that truth for more women, there will be more women in STEM and more women in tech. The way that I kind of bridge build for where we are now and where I'd like us to be is I walk in those rooms.
Yeah.
I ask questions. I don't go to like, I don't even know what they would be. Like, I don't hang out during my free time. What's even a thing? This is so embarrassing. This is how little I know about my own industry. I'm like, what's a Hollywood thing? I don't know. I don't go to, yeah, great, cool. I don't like go to many parties. Like, that's not my scene. I take my weekends off or request time off to go to conferences. Yeah. I've been going to the world's nerdiest conferences for 15 years. And it's at those places where you meet super cool tech founders, where you hear about what they're working on. Yeah. And as a person who has this big audience of people who I talk to and also likes gadgety stuff and apps, I go, oh, well, I mean, your user interface is cool, but you know it would make more sense to the average person who, you know, uses apps but isn't writing code if you just did this. And they go, interesting. Mm-hmm. And you offer value before you ask for value. You show up and you help people make their work better. You don't have to compete with everybody. You can collaborate. You can offer feedback. You can see and identify ways that something could be elevated and offer that to people. That's being a good human. And doing that enough, I made enough friends with people doing cool things that eventually I went, I want to work on this. I want to work with this company. I want to invest in this company. Mm-hmm. And like, I'm not in the position where I'm writing crazy checks. Like, I'm not the 1% of the 1 Hollywood percent. Like, I'm not making Jennifer Lawrence money, but that's cool. I still pay my bills making believe and telling stories, and that feels amazing. That was my goal. Yeah. But to get even a little skin in the game, invest in things, put your money where your mouth is. Yeah. That matters to people. Mm-hmm. And now I've been doing it so long that people bring stuff to me. It's kind of like the moment where I get invited to speak at colleges and I'm like, oh, that's happening now. Now I get phone calls and people are like, will you come in and beta test this? And I'm like, yes, I will. I did the work and I'm really proud to be here, and yes, I will.
Yeah, and one of the things that you mentioned when you were talking is about when you're speaking about your successes, it seems selfish sometimes as a woman, because that's how the society, like when we're younger as girls, it's like if you're being too ambitious, like tone it down a little bit.
Ambition is not a dirty word. Why do we act like ambition is a dirty word for women?
Yeah, but if it's for a man, it's like, oh, you're ambitious, that's good for you. Then like, how do you combat that? Like, what do you say to those people when you're like, oh, you're too successful, stop saying that, you're too ambitious, like tone it down? Like,
I think first and foremost, I deeply value humility. I do. Yeah. And I think being humble is a great thing. I think there is difference between being humble and being self-effacing. Yeah. You do not need to erase yourself to make sure you seem like a humble person. Just be humble. Yeah. Don't be a dick. Yeah. And then people won't think that you are. It's a harder thing for women because anything for women that registers on the scale of being boastful or proud, suddenly we get met with this kind of an energy because men are supposed to do that. We change it by doing it. We change it by owning our success. We change it by saying, actually, these are my qualifications. This is why I'm hyper capable, and this is what I can offer to you. And people will look at you like, okay. One of my favorite things that's like a really good digestible little nugget is sometimes when I'm in meetings with a big group of men and I say something, it is really fun. Also, can I just say, sometimes being an actor is so fun for me because people automatically have this really archaic thought where they think that actors are all like pretty and dumb. And I love that because I'm like, oh, I got a journalism degree and did an emphasis in public relations and political science. I'm about to mop the floor with you. This is going to be fun.
I'm actually smart.
I love to be in a room where people don't think that I'm as smart as I am. Yeah. And when I say something, insightful, and one of the men in the room suddenly realizes that he's a little uncomfortable and says something silly, my favorite thing to do is go, I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure I understand your meaning. Could you expand on that? Talk about a way to shut down deeply ingrained energetic misogyny immediately. And if they can't do it, ask again. No, really, I didn't get your meaning. It's interesting, but I'd like to know more about your point. They're just not used to women owning their power. And it's okay. It doesn't make you a bitch or a nag. There's this thing where, women who are in charge are bitches and men who are in charge are tough. I'm like, you want to see how tough I can be? This is going to be a fun day. You have the permission to own that space, but you have to give it to yourself first. I spent a long time being polite, waiting for people to give me what I was owed, and one day, I'm so sorry because I realize we're at a school and I'm swearing, but I just have to say the phrase. I ran out of fucks to give. I went, I take up this much space. This is my space. I will take it up. I will use my brain power. I will offer feedback. I will speak as much as you speak, and don't touch me. Those are things I am allowed to do, taking up space as a human being. And the more of us who give ourselves the permission to do that, the more society has to give us permission to do it too. Mm-hmm. That's a big change maker. And it's not like the first day that you give yourself permission, you're gonna be like, oh my God, everyone in the world's treating me so differently. They're still gonna be terrible. You will still run into terrible people. That's a universal truth. But the more that you own it, give it, do it, the more that it will be easy when you run into a person who doesn't want you to take up the space that is your right, to brush off their idiocy and keep moving with your day.
Yeah, thanks. That was powerful.
Take up space.
So we're gonna move on to some pre-submitted audience questions.
Cool.
So the first question is from Emily Cardoso. Oh, there you go.
Hi.
A quick one. So Emily asked or said, "You are so inspiring."
Thank you.
How does it make you feel knowing you are changing and inspiring the lives of so many young girls or women?
That's one of those moments where I have the thing where I want to be like, no, and then I'm like, own it. I literally just told these people to own it. Well, thank you. That's very kind, and I do truly appreciate it. I think it's kind of everything's sort of a double-edged sword, right? There's responsibility that I take very seriously, and sometimes that responsibility does feel like a lot of pressure, where I'm kind of like, well, I'm just also a person trying to figure it out, and I want to help you figure it out, but I want us all to figure it out because we're in it together. That's really what it is. All I know is that each of us is here for a reason, and each of us has purpose, and everybody's passionate about something different, but there's these big universal truths that I think we can all agree on. And for me to know that the fact that I can't please everybody and not everybody's gonna like me, that's a given. Also, I just don't have time, who cares? But the fact that what I do can take some small section of people and make them feel activated to do their version of that, of activism, of self-care, of community responsibility, organizing, of loving the people in their life maybe a little better, of offering themselves a little bit more grace, because we don't need to be as hard on ourselves as we are. That reminds me to keep doing it too. Because if I was just talking in a vacuum, I would have run out of steam a long time ago. It's creating a community and being reminded that it matters that keeps me going, and what I'm met back with gives me that energy too. I'm inspired by people I encounter. I'm so deeply grateful, because we all know the internet can be a cold, dark place. I love using it to highlight causes and to help movements get going, but it also sucks to be on the receiving end of that much energy when people are as negative as they are. And I can't tell you how much it inspires me to keep pushing when I have a conversation with somebody who says, you introduced me to this cause and now my whole family works on it. Or you said this and it stuck with me so much that I got a tattoo of it. I was like, oh my God, I hope you don't regret that in 10 years. I was like, go with Shakespeare. Definitely a classic. I don't know. Those things reinforce me too. Mm-hmm. Truly. So thanks.
So our next question is from Steph. She's a first-year film and television student. No last name here. Oh, she's right here.
Hello.
So Steph asked, with everything going on with the Me Too movement and the Time's Up, how do you feel women's role are going to change in the film industry?
God, hopefully all industries. What I think is so impactful about what we're seeing with Me Too is, again, when you think about anybody who has a big reach, they get to use a platform as a bullhorn or a highlighter. And that's powerful. And a group of women saying, we're hearing what's happening to our sisters that are farm workers. We're hearing what's happening to our sisters who work in the medical community, the education community, and the military. We have to help them. And by helping them, we help ourselves. That's incredibly impactful. And ripping I almost feel like we ripped like the storm cellar doors off of a real creepy basement. And there's light getting in, and we are shedding light on what this has been like for women everywhere for far too long, and men too. If we look at numbers, men too. We have to make sure that the acknowledgement, the conversation, the fact that these conversations are taking place in public the way they are, people will tell you that 10 years ago, nobody ever thought that was going to happen. And in any industry, by the way, nobody thought that the big guys were going to fall and that the corporations who, make women sign NDAs were going to ever be called out. And it's happening. We need it. But what I want to see is real legislative change. I want to see the chorus of voices that are all saying Me Too. Thanks to this immediate sharing platform that we have with social media, I want to see legislative change. I want to see it on a policy level. I want to see that data aggregated and presented to our lawmakers so that they can't ignore it. I want to see unions change rules for farm workers, for nurses. I want to see SAG-AFTRA change the rules for people in my profession. I had a conversation with my girlfriend Hillary, who I used to work with, and we said, can you fathom that there wasn't a requirement as young girls, as 20-year-old girls on a TV show who were portraying teenage girls that were having their first sexual experiences and all of these things? Can you fathom that there wasn't a rep on set whose sole job it was to make sure that we were safe in those situations? That's insane to us. Mm-hmm. That's one of the real concrete changes we've presented and submitted as members of our union to the people who make union policy, because we want to see substantive legislative differences happen. That's where I hope that it goes. Yeah. And that's what I believe is important. But I don't just see it as being a film and television issue. I see it as being a global issue for women. Mm-hmm. And I think there's been, at least, where I live, in America, there's been this sort of really irrational kind of high horse where people are like, well, women here, men love to say this to me, where they're like, you work in developing countries, women in America have it better than anywhere else. And I'm like, do we? Interesting. The problems are different, but incidents of subjugation, abuse, violence, all of it needs to change. And there's no reason that any of us anywhere can't say, what's happening here may not be the worst on earth, but it's bad, and it needs to be made better. And by making my community better, I can also make communities for women everywhere better. That needs to be the job. So I look at it as a bigger umbrella issue than just in my own industry.
Yep. So the next question is from Anna. She's in second entry nursing. Oh, she's right there.
Hi.
So Anna's question is, this is a really good question. As an influential woman, what do you do in moments of fear and anxiety?
Oh, man. So I said that stuff never goes away. You know, I don't want to like ruin anybody's day, but there is no day where you're just like, I did it, it's done. What I've learned to do, how do I sort of put it in perspective? So I used to do this thing when I was in school where at the start of a semester, I'd look at what my kind of priorities were. So I'd look at my course load and I'd say, okay, these are things that need to be addressed on the days that I have these classes. These are things that need to happen every week. These are things that need to happen every month. And eventually I'm going to kind of get to the end. So you prioritize, right? I think about life, it's like a pie chart. Like this is 100%. This is all we got, is this little circle. So what do you want to give slices to? And anxiety, fear, self-doubt, all that stuff that never goes away, that shit can keep you up at night. It can ruin your day. It can make you blow the audition for the movie that you've never been more right for, or the pitch for the job that you've always wanted, whatever. And when that happens to you enough, where you're like, I am doing it to myself, you know that you have to start reprioritizing your pie chart. And for me, one of the most helpful things that I've ever been taught to do, because I've chosen to do the work and I've chosen to investigate sort of the human condition that is true for all of us and what that looks like in my specific little human equation, name it. Don't run away from it. The more that you try to pretend that you're not anxious or pretend that you're not questioning yourself and act fine. I'm so sick of acting fine. Isn't everybody sick of acting fine? God, I'm sick of it. When someone asks you how you are, be honest, unless you don't know that person, and then like I understand why you say fine. But, you know, you have to name it and go, oh, in this moment, I'm having this reaction. I'm hating on myself. Why? Because this thing is coming up and I'm actually not sure that I'm good enough to do it. Okay, that's an ugly thought. That's a thought that if my best friend spoke it about herself to me, I'd be like, are you nuts? You are the most beautiful, capable, brilliant, perfect. You're gonna get it. You're gonna get the job. You're gonna kill it. Everything's gonna be great. Okay, so maybe it's an irrational thought. But I feel like maybe I'm not good enough for this. Name it, identify it, welcome it in. You have to invite all your monsters to the party. You gotta give them a seat at the table. You just can't let them drive the car. So see them, sit them down, and then you and your whole self can also see all the other little creatures that you kind of have around your table, your intellect, your confidence, your uniqueness, your perspective. And those things get to drive. And that, I think, is how you kind of reshape the amount of attention that fear gets versus that you choose to give to everything else. Because it is a choice. It feels paralyzing and scary, but it's a choice. And you learn it. And again, when I'm like, I'm here talking, I'd love for you to learn it now. I don't want you to have to wait to learn it as long as I did. I don't have it perfect, but I have it better than I used to. So I know that you could have it better now, all of you, than you did a year ago, 2 years ago. I do believe that. I believe we can kind of shortcut if we really are intentional about how we're willing to examine our own shit. I swore again, I'm sorry.
No,
I don't know where that's going, I'm sorry.
The next question is from Olivia Palumbo. Did I say that right? Oh, she's right there. So Olivia asked, how do you overcome the societal norms that are constantly pressured within today's society, especially body image?
Oh man, isn't that just the worst? I had this moment the other day, actually, that was so funny. I was with a friend and we were looking through old photos, and I saw this picture, I don't know, I think I was like 22, this picture of us. And we both, at the same time, and as soon as we said it, I was like, oh, it's bad feminists. We both went, oh my God, we were so skinny. And I was like, no, we're not going to do this. But what was interesting when we laughed and we're like, what is it even? Oh my, of course we were skinny. We were 22 years old. Like, what? I went, why did that matter? And why, more importantly, when we were 22 years old, were we still hating on ourselves? Like, you kind of get taught. I remember Kirstie Alley talking about how when she was like starring in all these big classic 80s movies, and like doing Look Who's Talking, and everybody made her feel like trash. And she looks back at these photos and she's like, I literally looked like a supermodel. And everybody around me made me feel like garbage. She's like, and now, I'm 60 and I'm like overweight and I'm actually happy. But why did I feel like garbage back then when I was the thing that everyone told me was supposed to make me happy? It's an illusion.
Yeah.
We've been taught to always look at what somebody else has as being a better thing. And we've been taught also talk about deeply ingrained societal misogyny and the patriarchy. If women are constantly comparing themselves to other women and competing with other women, we're not running companies. So it's a distraction tactic. They get to sell us stuff, 70 to 80% of spending power, hello, and they get to keep us busy elsewhere. So I want for all of us to just lay it down. Like, every society in the world, everyone is built in every color and shape and size. And I don't know why modern society has taught us to hate those things about ourselves. You are what you are. Imagine if you could take all the energy you spend hating your body or hating what you look like and do something with it. Imagine how many books you would have read by now. Like, imagine the company you would have started by now. It's such a weird, terrible thing. And we're taught to compare ourselves to people who aren't even real. Like, every girl, supermodels are retouched in magazines. And now everyone's retouching themselves on their phones. It's crazy town. So I just think it has to be the kind of thing that we identify. And then we have to teach ourselves, and it's really hard. We have to teach ourselves that that's not the measure of our worth. That doesn't govern how lovable we are. It doesn't have anything to do with how smart we are. I gave up. And now I have my favorite jeans in when I'm, doing my thing and like eating well and hiking with my dogs. Like, I have those jeans, and then I have the jeans for when I'm like traveling and I'm just eating pasta and I'm not exercising at all. And honestly, I just don't care anymore. My body gets me to where I need to go, feeds my brain, helps me work on social movements, helps me be here to speak to you guys. I'm lucky enough that I can see and walk, that I'm able-bodied. I do not have the right to hate my body for one more day. And I really, 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 really would love for all of you not to either. We're so fortunate to be in our bodies, to be alive, to be healthy. I really would love for us, and maybe it's the women in this room who start to build the next version of advertising, the next campaign that starts to tell us exactly this, that bodies are blessings. Full stop.
So we have time for one last question. This question is from Kristen D'Souza. Oh, she's right there.
Hello. I feel like you guys were all here.
Thank you, Sophia, for coming.
This is real cute. There's even a note on here. You guys are really cute. Thanks. I appreciate that. I never get flowers. This is really nice.
You're such an inspiration to us, so thank you for being here. I know you said that you normally don't do this, but it really, we're like, Sophia, we want to get Sophia here.
Thank you.
So
I mean it. I'm so grateful to be here. I think you're all totally badass. I'm excited to see what you build and what you make. And thank you for the thoughtful questions. You take my homework.
Okay. We're going to do meet and greet now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to
go somewhere else?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to go.
All right, awesome. So...